Hello, and welcome to Law Talk. My name is John Celebrezze, and I'm the co-founder of the Celebrezze-Zangi Community Legal Education Project, as we call it, CZ-CLEP for short. Our organization provides continuing education about the judiciary and legislature to attorneys, judges, government officials, and the general public. As a career educator, I recognize early on how important legal matters are and how they impact our lives. I am the nephew of the late Anthony J. Celebrezze, who was the popular 5-term mayor of Cleveland and a member of President Kennedy's cabinets. As a tribute to his lifetime commitment to the legal process, we dedicate this show.
John's special guest today is Judge Kevin Dunn. Judge Dunn has been involved with the Medina County Rotary, Medina Area Chamber of Commerce, the Medina County Law Library, and the Medina County Red Cross, among various other community organizations. He also has served as president of the Medina County Estate Planning Council from 1996 to 1998. Judge Dunn and his wife Lisa have 2 daughters, Emily and Megan. They live in Westfield Center and are members of the Sacred Heart Catholic Church. Now let's join John with his special guest, Judge Dunn.
Judge Dunn, welcome to Law Talk.
Thank you, John. Appreciate the invite to come on.
Well, it's a standing invitation, and you can come back anytime you want.
Great.
You got a new job.
Love it. It's been an awesome job since August 5th. I've been appointed and placed in the position as the juvenile and the probate judge in Medina. It's a great job. It's a common pleas judge position. It covers the whole county, and get to work with kids, get to work with great staff people. I have about 57, 58 employees total.
Wow.
And it's a lot of fun.
That's great. And you are succeeding Judge Loan.
Yes, Judge Loan and I had, Judge Loan's been a longtime friend of mine. He had a health issue, had to step down, and I was appointed by the governor to fill out the balance of his term. And then I get to run in November for a new term. So.
I see. Well, we're going to, if you don't mind, I wrote
Sure.
some questions down about the various hats you're wearing, which I know our viewers will be interested. Juvenile court, probate court. We'll get as far as we can, and like I said,
Sure.
There's an open invitation. You're welcome to come back anytime you want. But I guess before we take off on that, I've known you for a long time in your pre-judge years. So for the benefit of our viewers, before we dig into your judgeship, tell us a little bit about your background before you were a judge.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Medina as a kid. I went to Miami of Ohio for my undergraduate, Akron U for my law school. And after I passed the bar, I worked for about a year in Brunswick, came down, opened up my solo office in Medina, Ohio, where I was there for 22 years. During that time period, I was also an assistant Medina city prosecutor and acted as a special prosecutor for the city of Medina on cases that they had conflicts. My practice was really diverse. I did everything from death penalty cases. You've had some people speak about those.
I see you in all the courts.
I did a lot of litigation. I had a kind of a soft section of my practice where people didn't see me was the estate planning and the probate work, because those are things that don't have you on the front page of the paper standing next to someone who's in a trial quite often. Did some adoptions early in my career. Did the job and family services cases. Did a little bit of everything. It was a really fun opportunity, but lots of long hours to make your clients very, very happy, and very diverse practice. It was a lot of fun, but I got to tell you, the judge job is just absolutely fantastic.
Great. Well, one last thing about your personal life. I mean, I was there when you were sworn in, and your wife and your daughters were there, but it's a community show.
Sure.
A lot of folks know your father and your mother.
Yeah. My dad was the Parks and Recreation Director in Medina, the first one they had. So he set up all of the city parks in Medina. Every one of those, he was instrumental in securing the land.
Right.
He has a football field out there named after him.
That's right.
And he's still alive, so that's a big thing
Bless
about
his
him. Both my parents live in Westfield Center, where I live too, with my wife Lisa, and I have 2 daughters, 2 teenagers that go to Archbishop Hoban High School, 16-year-old and 17-year-old. So I have the tribulations that a lot of parents have coming into my court with their kids too. Driving issues.
That's helpful to you,
issues.
what you have to do every day.
Oh yeah, every day.
And your mother is?
My mother was a former 8th grade school teacher.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because I still have people come up to me today, and one guy who's a city prosecutor goes, I didn't know your mom was the Mrs. Dunn, because I was apparently terrified of my mom. I said, well, I should try living with her. You know, she was pretty, made us conjugate verbs at the table and all that kind of stuff. No, she's super too.
I think that's a great family background. I'm glad we had an opportunity to at least plug them a little bit.
Yeah.
I know of at least one lawyer in Medina who happens to be in the same firm as I work, who has fond memories of being an umpire when when your dad was in that position. Okay, all right. Well, I guess you made it clear that you like your job. I don't know what we would do if you said you didn't, but
you're going to be stuck with me.
I was anticipating that. Okay, let's talk about the juvenile side. What are some of the common offenses you're seeing of juveniles, Judge Dunn?
We get a lot. Our court gets a lot of traffic offender cases on the light side, a lot of theft, but we get a lot of drug offenses too. We get several unruly types of charges, kids not going to school. We're working with a lot of the school districts, try to come up with some programming to effectively deal with that. Of course, right now, as we're coming down the stretch and we're filming this, it's towards the end of the school year.
Sure.
But it's really, we're seeing a big spike in drug-related activity.
Really?
So we're having to deal with that and come up with some programming, some plans, some methods to deal with those particular offenses and to try to get kids back on the straight and narrow and help their families out.
It probably all falls together when you think about it, though, Judge, because I've had your colleagues on, Judge Kimbler, Judge Collier. Judge Collier, speaking of his drug court.
Sure.
Judge Kimbler now, actually, he wants to do a show with the sheriff regarding a detox unit that out at the jail.
Yeah.
And it's all going back to the abundance of heroin use that we're seeing. Well, if we're seeing it in the adult courts, you're seeing it in your court too.
We have all kinds of issues with heroin. It's going to be a big problem. It already is a big problem. Most people don't see it because it's not in their face.
Yeah,
we have a drug court too as well on the juvenile side. It was started by Judge Lone. It was one of the first in the state, and it keeps being certified, where we try to weed kids off of the intro drugs, the marijuanas, the things that start them on the cycle. But we're also tackling the heroin. We're having more and more heroin issues come in. I also get the heroin cases on the other side of things, on the juvenile side and the probate side, when we have Job and Family Services stepping in to remove children who are born heroin dependent.
Sure.
We have a lot of people using heroin while they're pregnant, and those children are pulled out immediately. That child's deemed to be an abused child, and that becomes under my purview too, to take care of that child and make sure that child's going to be safe.
Well, we thank you for your service and all that you're doing, and I know you'll get out and work with the schools. Being a former school administrator myself, it's intricate. It's a problem. It's not a problem that many people want to talk about, but it's not going away. It's getting worse. The Attorney General of the state has recognized it. As I said, our judges have recognized it, but I guess you can't solve a problem until you recognize it. So.
Well, if people saw a lot of the materials and a lot of the reporting of it isn't in your face because there's HIPAA requirements.
Sure.
But you talk to EMT squad members and they'll tell you they're going out and they're having fist fights, trying to rehabilitate people. They're OD'd. They're giving them the rehabilitative drugs injection, the nasal sprays, and then it's a fist fight with that person because they're out of control. And they can't tell us, hey, we've responded to X amount of calls involving heroin. I will tell you, though, just as an aside, as we stand here, we have cases involving kids that are using heroin. It was reported to me the other day in a case, child is able to get heroin delivered to his house here in Wadsworth, where we're filming this, for $20 from Akron. Now, I can't imagine how cheap heroin must be to manufacture if someone can deliver it from Akron to Wadsworth for $20 to a kid's house.
Stuff is prevalent. It's all over that.
Yeah, it's terrible.
We got a problem.
We sure do.
Okay. How does juvenile court judge differ from adult common pleas regarding punishment and sentencing? I mean, there's. I know you've worked at all of these courts, but.
Sure.
For the benefit of my viewers.
Okay. Adult court, it's you're put on oftentimes being sent to a prison facility.
Sure.
In Ohio, we have what's called Ohio Department of Youth Services. Easiest way to sort of describe that is the juvenile version of prison. The state takes over children and that are not amenable to being dealt with at the local level. We run out of services for them. Their crimes are so extreme that we can't handle them, basically. And what we end up doing is, in the state of Ohio, we're cutting back our funding for that. The state of Ohio is pushing kids out to alternatives, and they are down to, as of last week when I was down in Columbus, 485 kids across the state in total are in the care of Ohio Department of Youth Services, down from about 2,500 when I first started.
Put it in perspective.
Yeah.
25.
So that's a dramatic cut. The
Which
punishments
puts more on us locally to deal with this.
Absolutely. We have numerous programs to deal with juvenile delinquency, the issues that cause the delinquency, try to stop recidivism. We have our drug court, as I indicated to you. We run programs for theft prevention. We have a teen court, which is a pretty unique circumstance. An offender signs up and is willing to go through teen court. They present their case, and it's heard by a group of teens who act as the roles of all the parties in the court. And at the end of the hearing, they get to determine, by screening the case, what type of punishment that peer of theirs should get. Quite often it's writing a letter of apology, paying reimbursement costs, things of that nature. But then that juvenile who participated in that gets to come back and sit in the jury the next week. And so what you do is you also break out, and it impresses upon kids that these are your peers.
Yeah.
You're going to have to work with them. You're going to have to live with them.
Great program, Judge.
And it works out really nice. Sue, my one magistrate, who's a Wadsworth resident, does a great job of it. She stays and works with the kids. The prosecutor's office devotes one of their staff, and the public defender's office has referred somebody out. And sometimes we get private counsel to act. And it's a very neat program because we get just a good turnout of kids and a good result. And what it also does is also breaks the type A kids, maybe the kids who are leaders in their schools, get mixed up with some kids who may not be that way. And it breaks down those boundaries, so it works out very well for us. It's a neat program. It really is.
Okay, we're going to leave juvenile in a minute because I want to talk a little bit about probate. But sometimes we hear on the news, Judge, a juvenile, 16 years old, was involved in a heinous crime, a shooting. And that person has been bound over to common pleas court, adult court. I guess I have a question about that. Who makes that decision?
That's ultimately my decision as the judge. There are certain charges that are mandatorily set for bind over, and if there are provisions that are established by the prosecutor that I have to bind that child over as an adult. There's also discretionary bindovers where the offense may not be so heinous, but the background of the child is such that the prosecutor petitions and says, Judge, use your discretion. We think this child is so far gone that they need to be dealt with at the adult level. I had one of those cases here a short time ago, and a young man voluntarily, despite being cautioned, decided he wanted to be voluntarily bound over, and we went through that process. Usually it's very serious offenses, and the way that works is we not only have explanation of their rights, we explain to them what would happen to them in the juvenile system, what may happen to them in the adult system. We do a background workup on them, mental health, their history. We look at a whole series of factors that I have to consider as to whether that person's amenable to being treated. Yes, it certainly is. It's whether they're amenable and whether we can do something with that child in the juvenile system. I have jurisdiction to work with kids up until the age of 21 and have them responsible to our court until 21. And what's occurring across the state, there was a law that was passed that's created some havoc for us juvenile judges, requiring us to go through a process. It used to be when kids were 18, once you reach the age of emancipation, you could be sent to spend your time for your violations over at the jail.
Yeah.
Well, now one of our legislators wanted that changed and got it worked in a bill, and they changed it. So I have to hold 21-year-olds over at our detention facility, which is a maximum security facility, right down the street from the jail.
Yeah.
But it is difficult having a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old in that facility when I also have 10, 12, 13, 14-year-olds there.
Truly kids.
So, it's difficult. But we were able to work through all those kinds of things.
Okay. Again, let's shift. I mean, you multiple hats, shift to probate. A question that I think the lawyers sometimes kick around, and we just assume everybody knows everything. But I'm going to ask you, what is a guardianship?
A guardianship is where the court appoints or an individual may, in their last will and testament, designate someone to take care of them if they're incapable of taking care of themselves. There's two types of guardianships. A guardianship of a person that I would, for example, John, if you were incapable of taking care of your medical needs and taking care of choices and selections of doctors, that would be a guardian of a person.
Okay.
Guardian of a state would be also having me be responsible for your financial outlook, paying your bills, making sure that your affairs were taken in order and taken care of.
I guess it could be both.
Sure, and we do have both.
Yeah.
The difference between the two is we require bonding typically, that someone has to put up an insurance policy to ensure they don't run off with someone's assets in a case. But it's a very, very important thing for people to consider when they set up a power of attorney, or if they set up their last will and testament. The person they're selecting is a trustworthy individual. Oftentimes the court will be in a position to appoint someone to be someone's guardian because they get brought to our attention that they have no family members, and it could be a doctor or someone referring them to us, and then we'll go out and quite often we'll hire an attorney to be in that position.
That was going to be my next question. I mean, it doesn't always have to be an attorney, does it?
No. We also have a great program called our Volunteer Guardianship Program. Acting as the judge, I'm also what they call the superior guardian. That's what all the judges refer to as. Yeah. I am the guardian over every person, every ward in a guardianship. Okay. I am the top dog, so to speak.
Decision, sure.
But that person in the middle is the person who they may have selected or been appointed by the court. Our volunteer program is for people who just need a guardian over their person. We have a group of people who have volunteered, come in, had some training, and it's a perfect idea for people who may be in a nursing home that have no family. It allows us that social outlet that we can provide a guardian, an individual to check up on that person, make sure they're being taken care of. They could be living by themselves. Gives a person to step in the course of your day that you know, in the good old days when families all lived on the same block, you'd stop in and check on them.
That's not the case anymore.
And the program's been very successful, and our folks do that at no charge. It's completely a voluntary basis. And if people are interested in doing that, just contact the court. We do training sessions. It's almost like taking communion out to the sick. It's sort of the same process.
Well, you know, Judge, you're sort of setting yourself up here, because when you get into a position like I do as the guest of Law Talk, you're always looking for shows down the road. You have mentioned two here that have really whet my appetite.
We'll be happy to talk about
the teen program, that could be a show unto itself.
Oh, yes.
And this, better yet, I mean, well, they're both fine programs. So at any time, if you or whoever you have coordinating,
we'd love to come back and give you more info.
Bring a volunteer guardian with you, or somebody who actually participates. Well, we'll do it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. The man of many hats. Now we go from the guardianship to adoptions, something that actually you did as an attorney.
Yes.
Okay. Now you have to have an attorney to do an adoption, right?
You do not need an attorney to do an adoption. However, it's almost impossible to get through all of the process by yourself. A lot of forms. The process requires a lot of background work, and you're really much better off going to an experienced attorney to put that all together for you. There's timing issues in getting documents in.
Sure.
There's hearings. There's a consent process where consent has to be either provided by the biological parents or a finding made by the court that their consent is not necessary. For example, they've had no contact with the child, they've abandoned the child. There's certain cases where Job and Family Services may have a permanent order that they've taken custody of that child, and then they would be consenting to and doing a transfer of adoption. Adoptions are absolutely one of the greatest things I get to do.
That's sort of a fun part of your job. I mean,
it's awesome.
I mean, you start out your morning dealing with some tragic situation in juvenile court, which you might have to bind somebody over to adult court. It must be good by the end of the day to say you've given a home to somebody. It does raise kind of a legal question. I think my viewers would be interested. Once you adopt somebody, Judge, you adopt the child, does that child have all the same rights as if he was born to you?
Absolutely. They have the right to, if you died without a will, they'd be named as an heir, and they would take just like your natural born children. You have the same obligations that you would owe your natural-born children, i.e. paying support for them if you got divorced from your spouse and you had an adopted child. That child is absolutely just as if it came from birth by you, and you had provided all of the
In the eyes
DNA
of the
for
law,
it.
he's exactly the
Yes.
same as if he...
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's an incredible fun thing, and I know one of your partners who you get to work with has a great time doing those too.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
I enjoy every one of them.
Yeah,
They're pretty cool.
We actually did a show on adoptions once, and it was really pretty interesting.
You know, the funny part is adoptions are closed proceedings, so people aren't
Right.
aware of it.
Yeah.
I did have probably one of my favorite hearings and things I was able to do thus far on the bench was with one of your partners, an adoption via Skype. We had a soldier
there you
that was
go.
called up to active duty, and the way the adoptions work, the child's placed in the potential adoptive home after we get consents for a period of 6 months. Then we get reports and things back and ensure that the child's going to be safe, that it's working out, and then we finalize that adoption. Well, the soldier was called up to Afghanistan, and he was not going to be there, and therefore the adoption wasn't going to go through. We were able, with technology,
With
and
Skype.
we
That
brought
is
him in via
super.
Skype in one of our courtrooms, put him on the widescreen TV that we do, or initial appearances
Yeah.
on for kids at the detention center.
That is cool.
And the little baby, it was really neat because the baby had only seen Dad on one of the
Sure,
little cell phones
sure.
and never saw Dad in a big. And the child was looking up. It was wonderful. And my staff, actually, a couple of them got to be there because we had to ensure that the process was going to work. My IT guy was in tears. The woman who's done adoptions for us as a clerk for years had never witnessed one. So it just absolutely
Made
blew
history.
away. It was great. It was really neat.
Well, at the risk of a little bit of a plug here, I will say this from the heart, and having done some adoptions in your court, you have probably one of the nicest staffs of people, frankly, Judge, I've ever worked with.
They're
I mean, they really
make
do.
my job easy. I
Well, I
tell
mean,
them every day.
When you go to talk about an adoption, they purely put it in perspective. Well, everything else I've ever asked,
Yeah,
but
sure.
I did a pro bono adoption here when Judge Lone was in there, and I even mentioned to the judge, he said, you couldn't have a better group of people working for you. Okay, my friend, you really, all those years of your dad doing the parks must cause you to be quite the ball player, because you're taking the pitches as quick as I'm. So now we've gone from, well, here comes another one.
Okay,
All right.
fire away.
Okay, you ready?
Go for
What does
it.
it mean to probate a will?
Probate means to prove in Latin, and probating a will is if I create what I want my estate to go to. It states everything I may have had, all of my belongings. I name who I want to get what. I'll name a person to be my executor, someone who's going to take care of all my affairs. So if something happened to me, John, I would want you to line up and take care of everything. Pay all my debts out of all my assets, make sure my assets get distributed to who they are supposed to go to. And that proving process is what probate's about. You have to come to court, establish this is my last will and testament, that I had the idea that I wanted these things to go where, I had the proper ability to execute that will, that I had the intent to transfer assets to certain people, and then I have that executor who I appointed to follow through and do that. And for us, from our side, we do a lot of verification. Did the monies actually go to this thing? Was the bill paid? And probate can be a lengthy process. If you have to go through, it's a minimum usually 6 months.
That's what I was going to ask you about. How long does it take?
It can go on for years, and 6 months is usually the minimum, because that's the time period that creditors can come in and find out that someone's died and say, oh boy, John had a mortgage and we wanted to make sure our mortgage was paid away. He had some debts owed to us and we didn't know he died, and now we were submitting a claim to the estate. There's also a process called relief from administration. If you have certain monetary amounts when you die and you only have $35,000 or less, you can get kind of a quick release from administration. Or if you have $100,000 and everything is left to your surviving spouse, they can get a release from administration. It goes much faster, yes.
But on that one, Judge, and actually your answer on the adoption sort of surprised me, but I guess I was under the impression you had to have a lawyer. But on a probate, again, do you have to have a lawyer for that?
You don't have to have an attorney for that either. However, like I'm going to caution everybody, you will get so far ahead by having an attorney, it's not funny. People look, and it's a very form-driven method. That you have to report things a certain way. And people go, "Oh, it's simple. I just fill out a form," but they don't know what those terms mean in the form. They don't understand how you're to post things correctly on those forms. Like, I could do my own taxes, and if I had $1 million income and all kinds of transfers and stuff, I'd probably not be doing myself a favor by trying to do that myself than going to a professional and a CPA or somebody.
Well, I know the process, and again, the reason I passed the accolade to your staff. I mean, I've had personal experience as an attorney myself, where I had to ask them.
They're very helpful.
You know, and I could see where somebody maybe good-hearted wants to do it for Uncle Charlie. You might be better off just go get a lawyer to do it.
We've had a few, and my good-natured clerks go, "Okay, this is the guy from Texas again, Judge. We send out the form, and they can't get it right, and it unfortunately delays things. And what it does is it creates an animosity. We can't correct their paperwork. We can't do it for them." And you're held to the same standard as an attorney when you come in and do it pro se. That's the whole deal.
Well, my friend, you've got yourself one busy job, but you certainly are showing signs of enthusiasm, as I knew you would, and you're handling it. So in our last few seconds, I will extend that invitation again. Some of these programs you mentioned, maybe it would help not only the court but my viewers to see firsthand, and maybe some folks in the community might want to volunteer to be part of the
guardianship program.
I'm sure you're looking for good people.
Oh,
there
always.
Time, so.
And it's a really good program to find people in the right spot for it. So thank you very much, John.
Good show, man.
Comments made by John's guest on Law Talk are solely those of his guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of Celebrezze Zangi Community Legal Education Project. To view this show and others, go to www.czclep.org. In the Wadsworth area, a complete listing of dates and times of this broadcast, tune in to WCTV Channel 15 or log on to wadsworthcity.com and follow the links to WCTV. At CZ we're devoted to the education of today's legal issues. Fueled by the public's keen interest in our legal system and current events, CZ is dedicated to the educational venues aimed at enhancing the understanding by all citizens, regardless of age, education, occupation, or wealth. A function of the Celebrezze Zangi Community Legal Education Project.